So in primary school, I used to be called Nabila the Gorilla. And the reasoning behind that was I had really thick black arm hair. I actually had hair everywhere. It was like I had like sideburns, and at the time I don't think it registered to me that that was actually a really influential moment in my life, if that makes sense. I knew that it hurt me and it upset me and it made me think that I wasn't beautiful, that I was ugly because of it. And I guess I always felt like a bit of an outsider as well. And so it contributed even more to that because, well, you know, the girls in my school, they didn't look like me. It was interesting because it was only a couple of years ago that I actually realised how much that small moment influenced me, pretty much to the point where I've now actually gone and lasered off all of the hair on my arms and my legs just so that nobody can ever say that again. But that was like probably one of the first experiences that I had where I really recognised, I guess, a very small part of sexism, which was that women and their bodies should look a certain way. You know, for most part, I've come a long way in terms of coping and dealing with my own anxieties and my own insecurities. I struggle with feeling like, you know, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not lovable enough. Sometimes I almost feel like, you know, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and sometimes I feel a little like that. Everything that I've sort of gone through has sort of it's impacted me in a way that I still question myself. Like, you know, when you're in a meeting and you've got this really great idea, you know that it's a great idea, but you still question yourself. You have this moment of going, actually, maybe I shouldn't say it because it might be really, really stupid. So you always feel like you're not deserving or worthy enough. I think that really, that's something that's come through and that I've noticed within myself. And it's something I always trying to push back against within myself. And this has been my biggest battle. In my culture, and women get married at quite early in their 20s. So you get educated, and then once you finish off that, it's really time to find somebody and to settle down. And it's not just find anybody, it's someone who's from the same background and the same religion, and somebody whose family is of status. That as soon as I turned 18 and I'd finished high school, I remember going back home to Bangladesh, and it was something that all my aunts would always bring up. When are you going to get married? And, you know, are you going to get married to someone your parents choose? And so as I sort of got older, I was doing my own thing. I was going through uni and I was working and I was building myself up to achieve all of these things on my own because I really wanted to prove that I could do it on my own and that I didn't need someone else to look after me or to take over from my father. And I had an uncle call me one time, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really good. I've been doing all this awesome stuff." And I was like, he genuinely really cares and he wants to hear about what I'm doing. And he's like, "Oh, that's great. But I just wanted to talk to you about sort of this whole marriage thing. You do realise that you're getting a bit older and, you know, it's sort of like this thing of like old meat. Like in a shopping centre, nobody wants to buy it once it goes by a certain expiry date. So your situation's sort of starting to become like that." And I was just so taken aback. And I didn't actually say anything. I guess in hindsight, I kind of wish I did, just to stand up for myself. But I guess at the same time, I almost think, what good would it have done? Because people who have that mentality often don't change. And then as I got even older, pressure sort of kept building up to the point where I basically said to my parents that if you don't stop, it will completely ruin our relationship. What it was doing to me, I guess, psychologically was actually really painful. I felt like no matter what I achieved or accomplished, I just wasn't good enough because I wasn't fulfilling this, I guess, idea that all women have to follow this life path. That's probably been one of my biggest struggles to date. And it still is. Even though I understand it better, even though I acknowledge my reasons for not and I understand like the value of waiting and sort of living my own life and making my own decisions and being completely accountable for those decisions, I still feel like I have in some way failed, and that I haven't really done them proud. And that's really sad for me. I think a really pivotal moment for me was in my early 20s when I was having a discussion with my dad. I can't remember what it was about, but he basically said, you know, you're actually very different from your sister. You're a lot more tolerant and a lot more timid. And I walked away from that conversation feeling quite angry by that comment. And I wondered, was the fact that I was a lot more timid and tolerant, was that why he sort of, my dad had a bit of a hot temper. And so sometimes I guess that meant that he would have a lot more authority over my autonomy, especially in my youth. A lot of, you know, you can do this, you can't do this. And that was almost a result of, I guess, cultural and religious norms. And I think in that moment, I really realized the importance of my voice and the power of my voice. In particular, the way that I've sort of grown up, my needs and wants have never really been at the forefront of anybody's interests. I've really had to fight for them myself, argue my way through the fact that I wanted to continue studying after I'd finished my bachelor's, argue my way through having a job that required me to work in the city, and the fact that I might come home late at night. Everything was an absolute fight for me, and all of those things that I wanted for myself, I really had to prove case in point and argue for. And that really exhausted me. But I'm so glad that I did, and that I defied all of these social expectations and norms that my parents were trying to put onto me. I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am now. I wouldn't have been able to open up the door for my sister to be able to do all of these things with ease and comfortability as well. I think the second pivotal moment for me was a moment where one of my close friends and I were at lunch, and we were actually talking about, I guess, a sexual assault that had happened to her. And we were holding each other's hands, and she was sobbing. And I felt a real great level of empathy for her, but I couldn't bring myself to cry. It was obviously like really difficult to sort of hear someone that I truly loved and cared about having gone through an experience like that. And I said to her, I've gotten to this point where I've dealt with so much misogyny, and that I've almost become numb. And she said to me, you can't be numb. You can't not be affected by this. You have to be. You have to be angry, and you have to want to sort of fight the system, because if you're not, then you almost become complacent in the problem. And so that was a really pivotal moment for me in really recognizing that, I guess, speaking up, not just for myself, but I guess the women around me and their experiences, in particular women who feel like they don't have a voice or can't voice their thoughts or their opinions or their experiences, was really important. And then ever since then, it's just been really just learning as much as I can and sort of observing the world and observing my part in the world as well. I know what life I don't want, and so for me it's really about working towards a life that I do want. I've seen how so many stories have played out. People have adopted the story that somebody else wants to write for them, and how that leads to a life of bitterness and resentment and self-loathing often. And so for me, that's what gives me the fire to keep going.